Once upon Africa with Oye, in every heart there is a battle, in every choice a consequence. Pay attention. This might not just be a story. Let's begin. The lion, without hurrying, quietly stepped out of the forest. Then the drums stopped beating. The dancers froze mid-air in their steps. The entire village fell into a deep silence. The beast didn't pay attention to any of that, but stared at the king's poor bride. Then it opened its mouth and spoke a strange sound that sounded like a name. Afeltan. A mixture of surprise and fright caused the bride to collapse to her knees and burst into tears. There was not a single person in the kingdom who had heard that name before. Nobody understood why the bride was crying. Ilugbade was a peaceful Yoruba village surrounded by huge farms and unusual thick forests. Far to the edge of the village lived a young woman named Bifun Ade. The people commonly called her Bifun. Most of the time, she sold fresh roasted corn with her mother. They lived in a small mud house. Most of the time, or rather all the time, they wore simple clothes. The villagers were always in the habit of looking down on them, but Bifun never looked at that side. She never complained. One market day, around midday, when the market was in full session, an old woman was accused of stealing. The large crowd around the scene became angry. Most of the people in the crowd demanded severe punishment for the offense. Bifun, who was also in the crowd, stepped forward and made a defense for the old woman. "Has anyone seen her steal?" she asked. The crowd fell into uneasy silence. After a vigorous, careful search, Bifun found the missing goods hidden behind the merchant's own basket. The old woman was, after all, innocent and knew nothing about the missing items. The merchant hung his head in shame, and many of the accusers begged the old woman for pardon. Among the crowd stood a stranger who was carefully following the event as it unfolded. The stranger was no other person than King Adetutu in disguise. He had been walking among his people, unnoticed by any of them. The action of Bifun impressed him beyond words. Not Bifun's beauty, nor her poverty, but her wisdom, her courage, and her love for truth. The king could not stop thinking about her brave intervention and wisdom. For days, the incident lingered in his mind. Months later, drums echoed across the kingdom. King Adetutu had made up his mind. He made a surprising announcement. He would marry Bifun, the poor girl whose mom sold roasted corn. Gossip spread like wildfire through the village. Many could not believe what they were hearing. Some laughed and called it the biggest joke of the year. Others were filled with fury. One man became uncomfortably furious. That man was Chief Dotun. Chief Dotun was the richest elder in Ilugbade. He wanted his own daughter, Omobola, to become queen. Now, his dreams were destroyed, sinking fast. His pride blazed uncontrollably like a raging fire. Standing alone in his compound, he clenched his fists and swore, "That poor girl will never sit comfortably on that throne." From that moment, a dangerous plan began taking shape in his mind. 3 days to the wedding date, some ancient palace jewels disappeared. The next morning, the missing jewels were unexpectedly discovered beneath Bifun's sleeping mat. The village exploded with a huge noise and anger. "She's a thief! She deceived the king!" Even some elders believed the accusation to be true. Bifun stood silently, unmoved, as people poured insults on her. The king refused to give a hasty judgment. The truth does not fear investigation, Bifun said with confidence. Then a careful search began. Soon, evidence pointed elsewhere, not in Bifun's direction. The missing palace servant was found alive. The jewels had been planted by somebody. The trail led straight to Omobola, Dotun's daughter. Bifun was clearly innocent, but a good number of the villagers still doubted her, including those that were influential. The wedding took place just as the king demanded. Plenty songs were sung, dancers celebrated, performing new steps specially styled for the occasion. Yet, inside the palace, Bifun felt alone, very alone. Every mistake became her fault, no matter who made it. Every rumor carried her name, filled with blame and accusation. Many of the kingdom's subjects still saw her as a poor village girl pretending to be queen. Dotun was biding his time and quietly waited for another opportunity. Months later, food began disappearing, not because harvest was poor. In fact, good rains brought high yields and farmers enjoyed a strong harvest. Yet, the granaries became empty. Families started going hungry, very hungry. Fear spread throughout the whole village. The kingdom needed answers. In fact, very urgent answers. Dotun saw another chance in this and exploited it dangerously. Dotun gathered all the elders that were most influential. His voice sounded calm, but his words were poison. Since this woman entered the palace, he pointed out, misfortune has followed. The villagers nodded in agreement. Many of the people believed him. The queen once again stood alone and exposed. The antagonist was winning. Bifun refused to surrender. She remained strong despite all the provocations. One night, she secretly followed suspicious workers. They traveled beyond the village, past farms, past streams, to an abandoned warehouse in a remote location. What she saw there made her heart skip a beat. What is this? What is happening here? She was asking herself. Inside the warehouse were mountains of stolen food. They were carefully packed and arranged. Workers loaded sacks under torchlight, working freely with careless abandon. And standing among them was Chief Dotun. Bifun finally understood everything. The famine was deliberate. The suffering was planned. Dotun wanted the people angry enough to remove her from power. Before Bifun could escape, guards captured her. Dotun smiled. Then he revealed a shocking secret. Years ago, Bifun's father discovered his crimes. To protect himself, Dotun arranged his death secretly. Bifun felt the world spin around her. The pain was unbearable, but Dotun was not finished. Dotun locked Bifun inside an old hut deep in the forest. The place was very lonely. It was dark. It was cold. At night, strange sounds echoed outside for hours. Days passed. The villagers believed Bifun had disappeared. Dotun's power continued to grow steadily with more wealth and more power. Bifun carefully studied the guards and understood how they coordinated. She watched them, eyes wide and steady. She waited patiently, keeping still and small, so her captors wouldn't notice the plan forming in her head. On the fifth night, she escaped unnoticed, not through force, through intelligence, while their attention was elsewhere. By dawn, she was running with all her strength toward the village. Hope had returned to her heart. She knew she had fully escaped from her captors. Bifun returned and told the truth, but nobody believed her. Dotun had poisoned every ear. All the elders doubted her. The villagers mocked her. Even some palace officials turned away. She had no proof, nothing to confirm her statements. And without proof, truth sounded like a lie. Then the annual festival of courage arrived. The entire kingdom gathered at the festival ground as usual. Suddenly, a giant lion emerged from the sacred forest. It moved without hurry. People screamed. Warriors stepped back. The lion walked directly towards Bifun. Then came the shocking moment. Afeotan. The strange sound sounded exactly like her childhood name. Only her father and grandmother had ever known it. Tears flooded her eyes.
I feel
The
time.
crowd stood frozen. The lion began scratching the ground beneath a huge tree. Hunters investigated. Buried beneath the roots was a wooden box. Inside the box were letters, records, and proof of Dotun's crimes, proof of the stolen food, proof of corruption, proof connected to her father's death. The truth had finally appeared. Dotun was arrested. His allies abandoned him. During judgment, the powerful chief unexpectedly broke down in tears. I destroyed innocent lives because I worshipped power. The villagers lowered their heads in shame. One by one, they apologized to Bifun. Then came the greatest surprise. Bifun forgave them. I will not allow bitterness to rule my heart. Many cried. King Adetutu held her hand, and the kingdom learned a lesson it would never forget. A Yoruba proverb says, no matter how long a lie travels, the truth knows the road home. From that day forward, nobody called her the poor bride. They called her the woman truth could not defeat. In this story, the key lessons are: never judge people by their poverty. True worth shows through character and wisdom. Greed may succeed for a time, but the truth will eventually reveal every hidden wrong. Forgiveness heals wounds that revenge can never fully cure. If this story touched your heart, remember, truth may stumble, but it never stays down. Like, share, and subscribe to Once Upon Africa with Oye for more unforgettable African stories. Until next time.